Welcome everyone to the program. Well, let's kick off this noon bulletin with the swearing and inauguration of the governor of Kogi State, Mr. Yaya Bello, for a second term in office. Well, the ceremony is currently holding in Lokoja, the state capital, where the governor, alongside his running mate, Mr. Edward Onoja, will take the oath of office. Well, Bello is running to power for a second time, and that follows his defeat of the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, Musa Wada. Bello of the APC polled a total of 406,222 votes against Wada's 189,704 votes. Natasha Akpoti of the Social Democratic Party, SDP, came a distant third with a score of 9,482 votes. The APC candidate won in 12 of the 21 local government areas of the state. Well, let's head over to the court where the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, has arraigned the former senator representing Kaduna Central, Shehu Sani, before the Federal High Court in Abuja for alleged bribery and advanced fee fraud. The former senator has, however, pleaded not guilty to the charges as his counsel asked the court to grant him bail, a plea which the EFCC lead counsel kicked against, arguing that he was just served a bail application notice. And that made the presiding judge, Justice Inyang Eko, to step down the hearing till 12 p.m. to enable the prosecutor study the bail application. The EFCC had earlier obtained an order to keep Senator Sani for 14 days, and then another order to further keep him for extra 5 days while investigation into the matter continued. Senator Sani had on January the 16th filed the enforcement of his fundamental rights over his continued detention by the Commission, which he described as illegal and a breach of Section 35, subsection 5 of the Constitution. He is accused of extorting money from the owner of ASD Motors, Sunny Dauda. And staying with the judiciary, an Abuja High Court has fixed Thursday, January the 30th, for ruling on the bail application of the former Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Mohammed Adoke, and two others. The accused on Thursday pleaded not guilty to a 42-count charge involving $1.3 million Malibu oil deal preferred against them by the federal government. Also listed as defendants are Malibu Oil and Gas Limited, Nigeria Ajib Exploration Limited, Shell Nigeria Ultra Deep Limited, and Shell Nigeria Exploration Production Company Limited. The defendants were arraigned before Justice Abubakar Kutigi, who, after listening to the arguments, adjourned the hearing till today and ordered the defendants to be remanded in EFCC custody. And from the court to matters of national security. Well, in the country, which of course has been a cause of concern for Pastor Tunde Bukhari, who is a former running mate to President Muhammad Buhari. That's when he was a candidate of the Congress for Progressive Change, CPC, in the 2011 presidential election. Well, Pastor Bukhari believes that Nigeria cannot afford to take lightly its security challenges, as he believes that this may lead to anarchy in the nation. And so he's insisting that restructuring cannot be swept under the carpet. He was speaking at the weekly Sunday service of his church here in Lagos.
When one considers the argument for and against Amotekun, one will find a recurring reference to the issues which we as a nation have failed to deal with in past decades. The proponents of Amotekun, particularly in the South, justify the move by reinforcing the Sharia police of ISBA as a northern region version of regional policing. The opponents, on the other hand, particularly from the north, express fears of possible regional political motivations. These are clear indications that the issues we swept under the carpet in the past decades are still staring us in the face. We cannot continue to hide under the umbrella of one finger. It is time to address the underlying issues of nationhood and reset Nigeria on the path to predictable progress. The way forward for these recurring questions of federalism, including that of regional or state policy, is neither to the left nor to the right, nor is it in the center of the discourse. The way forward is to travel downwards to revisit the constitutional foundations while looking upwards with unwavering faith in our divinely ordained destiny as one strong, united nation with a strong federal government and strong federating units, a nation in which government as an entity is close enough to serve the people and strong enough to protect them.
Well, President Muhammadu Buhari is reacting to some of the security challenges with some orders. Well, he says ending the insurgency and taking out bandits, kidnappers and cattle rustlers is a priority, even if it means sniffing them out of their hideout. That explains why he ordered that fighter jets should join the efforts to provide effective air attacks in taking out the hoodlums, particularly those around forests bordering Kaduna, Niger and Zamfara states. The president, who described the repeated attacks leading to the losses of several lives as a disaster for the nation, also commiserates with those who have lost their loved ones in different attacks, particularly in Niger State, that they will not be abandoned by the rest of the country. The president said he has received assurances that with the Hamatan dust gradually easing its hold on the skies, then fighter jets and aircraft will join the fight this week. He adds that the Nigerian Air Force is setting up refueling facilities at Minna, Niger State to support the aircraft operations. Well, the president's spokesperson, Mr. Femi Adesina, has been defending the administration's effort in the three major leg of promises which were made and the agenda for the nation. Mr. Adesina says the promise delivery may have been troubled and slowed down, but he insists that the Buhari government has not failed in delivering. He was speaking on our political program, Sunday Politics.
They could be troubled because it's a journey, it's a process. And along that journey, along that process, troubling times may come, but it does not mean that the journey has been truncated or that it has failed. It will still succeed because relatively, though security is troubled, it is still a lot better than it used to be in this country. The economy is showing signs of revamp. Inflation that is at 11.9 now was at 18 or 19 at a certain time. We should remember all these things. Corruption, that even they are saying not much has been done, the evidence on ground does not support that. So you cannot say that the president has failed in those three areas. They may be troubled.
And moving on to electoral matters, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has announced the results from Saturday's rerun elections in 28 federal and state constituencies, which held across 11 states in the country. The court, the court had ordered that the rerun be conducted previously following various issues that emanated from the 2019 legislative elections.
Ahmed Madaki Gololo of PDP, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared winner and is returned elected.
A round of applause at the announcement of results from the Gamawa Federal Constituency rerun election in Bauchi State. The PDP garnered 21,223 votes, while the NNPP 15,004. The PDP also recorded victory in Zaki Federal Constituency over the APC.
Benjamin Musa Mbaka of CAP.
In Kaduna State, the prize belongs to the candidates of the All Progressives Congress in Kagagu constituency.
Anwe Comfort of PDP scored 19,815 votes.
The tables then turned in favor of the PDP as its candidate was declared winner of the rerun election in Sanga local government area. The biggest upset, perhaps, is in Kano State, where the former chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Appropriation, Abdul Mumin Jibrin, and member of the APC, was defeated by his rival of the PDP. In the East, rerun elections were held in Abia and Imo states. In Abia, the All Progressive Grand Alliance, APGA, swept the polls at the Arochukwu State constituency, with the PDP coming through in second place. In Imo, the Action Alliance is declared winner by the electoral body INEC ahead of the PDP and other parties. The candidate of the All Progressives Congress also won the election of the Okigwe North Federal Constituency rerun election by over 10,000 votes.
Oshunsaya Kolakbo Korede of APC Party, having scored the required requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
The Southwest and the election results in Ogun State is in favor of the APC. This turn of events might be an indication that the political process might be heading in the intended direction, which is to provide fair outcome for proper scrutiny.
So let's talk about the aftermath of Saturday's polls and the issues that have been raised. We're being joined by Mr. Oluwale Osaze-Ozi. He's INEC Director of Voter Education and Publicity. He joins us from our Abuja studio. And here in Lagos is Mr. Wale Ogunade, who's a lawyer, an election observer, and also the President Voters Awareness Initiative. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the program this afternoon.
Thank you for inviting us.
So let's begin in Abuja with Mr. Osaze-Ozi. So the much anticipated rerun election has come. It's the first in the year 2020 as a whole, and we're doing a review. From what you have seen so far across 11 states, would you call the elections that took place free and fair, or how would you rate them?
Thank you. What we can say is that in almost all instances, the elections were successfully concluded and along the lines outlined by the Commission in the regulation and guidelines for the conduct of the elections and in compliance with the provisions of the Electoral Act. But there were incidences which sadly and very regrettably occurred that ought not to have occurred. In Esimdim, for example, that's in the Akwa Ibom State, our staff, officials were held to ransom, were kidnapped and taken to destinations other than the polling units that were assigned by some political thugs. Fortunately, they were rescued, and the outcome of that was not included in the final collation of results. In Isa local government in Sokoto State, where our staff were prevented from deploying by thugs. So there are about 4 incidences in Olu. The collation center was invaded at a particular time. The election was quite successful up to that point. Right. But there was an invasion of the collation center, and materials, including result sheets, were destroyed. And we had similar incidents in Cross River State where we were prevented from deploying.
Right, which is why
cases, we had.
Which is why I ask if you can say the elections were free and fair. I mean, you have mentioned some of those issues, but let's quickly bring in Mr. Ogwade here before we go to break. And if you check the definition of election, just a normal dictionary, you see that election simply is an process of choosing someone for a public role. It does not include violence. It says pretty much by voting. But when you see all these issues, can we still call it election?
Well, we are getting there. Don't forget that we're still coming back from the military era, where people see get into power through any means and through any how. And of course, from the barrel of the gun to the era of moonslide elections, where elections results were written in some sitting room and some places. Now it has come to the level of people now canvassing for people's votes. So the vote and the thumb and the individual voter has a deciding role. And of course, it now makes people to be returned or to be removed.
Let me let you hold your thoughts. Okay, we need to go for a break. But, you know, it begs the question, how far is this journey? I mean, 20 years and we still say we're getting there. I'll let you land.
We have to.
We'll go on this break. And when we return, Honorable Abdulmumin Jibrin concedes defeat after losing in the rerun elections. Details of that right after the break. Join us again. So welcome back to the program, and now to some of our stories in brief. Governor Umaru Fintiri of Adamawa State has commended the Nigerian Army in their efforts in tackling the security challenges facing the Northeast and the country in general. The governor made the recommendation, or in fact, the commendation, I should say, during the celebration of the 2019 West African social activities by the 23rd Brigade of the Nigerian Army in Yola, the Adamawa State capital. He therefore urged the Nigerian Army to remain focused in protecting the territorial integrity of the country because their sacrifices are not going unnoticed by Nigerians. And over to the Niger Delta, where youths in the region have appealed to President Muhammadu Buhari to expedite action on the construction of the East-West Road to put an end to the suffering of the people in the area. The president, leaders of Phase 1 of the presidential amnesty program in the Niger Delta, Chief Wilson Clifford, made this appeal while speaking to Channels Television after a meeting of the group in Uyo, the Akwa Ibom state capital. So let's go back to our discussion before the break. We're still reviewing the 11 states that went through rerun elections just over the weekend, the practice, what exactly happened, and how we can make elections better ultimately in the country. I will still have with us in the studio to discuss this Mr. Wale Ogwade, who's a lawyer and election observer, as well as a President Voters Awareness Initiative. Thank you so much for your patience. And in Abuja, Mr. Oluwale Osaziozi, INEC's Director of Voter Education and Publicity, is also with us. So, Mr. Ogwade, before I went on that break, I was asking you, see how far we have gone, and factoring the fact that election turnout, voter turnout for 2019 is the lowest on record, 34.7%. But you still think we're getting there. So how do you justify that?
We're getting there because, to me, the vote and the ballot box is talking. Unlike before, when what you normally see on election day, or the results you get are inflated figures. Now the electronic system has come in to reduce the number of inflation. And if you are, I'm sure those who are watching and you will remember that they used to have what we call landslide and moonslide results, which was inflated. That's why I was going before the break. But now, what we have are actual results, the people who are on ground, who came. Obviously, we may have maybe in a polling unit, 250,000, in a polling area, in a constituency, maybe 250,000, or in a polling unit, maybe 500 people voted, are registered to vote. On election day, maybe 250 or 120 people came. That is the normal thing. Unlike before that, you see the number skyrocketing far and above the number in that polling unit. And of course, that's why sometimes you see what will cause this rerun that now we have on our hands of election irregularities as provided for in Section 134 the Electoral Act.
That's just one of the yardsticks to measure how free and fair an election is. But let's rejoin Mr. Osaziozi. And you were part of the people that showed us statistics saying voter turnout has actually reduced, the lowest on record, 34.7 for last year's election, general election. And then we record this rerun election, and we still repeat the same thing, violence. You see ballot box snatching. There was kidnapping of INEC officials. So do you still think we're making progress? And in what ways would you say we're making that progress?
Being made, as Mr. Gonade has stated, we also be careful to not just dwell on the negative, because we conducted 28 constituency elections, senatorial districts, federal and state constituencies, and we flagged basically 4 incidences. That cannot be too bad, whatever ratio you want to use to determine that. But in what way are we making progress? He has outlined some of those ways. But let's go to what is the essence of the elections, the process. Now, was there adequacy of materials? Were they promptly deployed? In most cases, in all cases, there was adequacy of materials. Were they promptly deployed? Yes, they certainly were. In most cases, the people arrived on time. The officials conducting the elections, did they arrive on time? Yes, they did. And if they were late, why? We've outlined 2 places where they were prevented from deploying. So that's a breach of security. So when you look at these things, were they successfully conducted? Were results acceptable? Yes, they were. So those are some of the measures, and these are actual results, not inflated figures. Nobody, as far as I'm aware anyway, has complained that, look, there was some malpractice here and there that we looked at that had any substance. Definitely, in the coming days, some might decide to exercise their right to re-challenge those results in the tribunals. And so be it. So when you look at some of these things, I think there's been marked progress. Incrementally, we've been making good progress.
Just one more thing. I'd like you to speak to the... I'd like you to speak to that voter turnout figure. We've seen voter turnout from 1999 at 52% drop to 34.7% last year. What is responsible for this? And if we're looking to do better in our elections and, less people come out for elections, so how can we say we're getting better?
But look, you compare cheese with cheese. You don't compare cheese with apples. Now, what were the figures we have for by-elections, off-cycle elections? You'll find out that these are not significantly less. In fact, quite honestly, I will risk to say there are even more, but definitely a lot more can and should be done. We need to do a lot more to mobilize voters. We need to bridge that gap and disconnect between citizens and government, and people have to realize the stake they have in the process and the significance which their votes can make. So we're working on that, but there's a lot more work to be done in terms of mobilizing citizens, encouraging them to come out to vote. Democracy is all about numbers. It's all about participation. Radical issues. I'm aware of one state in California where they considered giving people money to come out to vote. I'm also aware of some jurisdictions like Australia where it's mandatory for you to vote, and there are penalties if you don't.
It'll be quite interesting
in
to see
those
that.
Two extremes, I think we can find.
It'll be quite interesting to see that you talked about. But on a final note, Mr. Ogwande, so the president promised to bequeath free and fair elections to Nigerians when he's leaving office. So if you could help the president say, you know what, these are the steps you should take, what will they be for you in a minute?
It's going to be comprehensive voter education. But before then, all the stakeholders, the major stakeholders, the politicians are the problem in this country. They want to be in power at all costs, and they want to overrun the rules. They don't want to go in line with the rules. And that's why you see that it's in Nigeria that all election matters go to court. And it's now the court that now beat them in line, rather than they setting rules for themselves. So the politicians and the political class have stakeholders meeting involving all the major stakeholders, election management body, security agents, and of course, what was it now? We, the observers, and of course, the media and major civil society.
We've always had this, Mr. Ogwande.
Yes?
We've always had this kind of sit-down.
No, we can't continue. We must always talk.
So we need to take a different
Of course, then they look at it very well. The electoral law itself. Is the electoral law proactive to take into consideration all these inanities that come up?
Okay, well, we expect that the president will be signing that when it is passed eventually. But I'd like to thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
To God be the glory.
Wale Ogwande is a lawyer, is an election observer, as well as a President Voters Awareness Initiative. Thank you for your time. And joining us from our Abuja studio is Mr. Oluwale Osaze-Oze, who is INEC's Director of Voter Education and Publicity. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Right, so moving on, still on election matters, more reactions continue to trail the sacking of Mr. Emeka Ihedioha. But before that, you see that the former chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Appropriation, Abdulmumin Jibrin, has lost his seat in the parliament and has considered defeat. Jibrin, who is a member of the ruling All Progressives Congress, lost to the People's Democratic Party's Alhaji Aliyu Dati Yako in Saturday's rerun of Kiru Bebeji Federal Constituency of Kano State. Now, according to the results as put forward by INEC, Jibrin polled 13,507 votes, and that's against the 48,601 votes polled by Aliyu Yako. In reaction to his loss, Jibrin said constituents came out en masse to exercise their civic responsibility, but he says they were denied their franchise to vote the candidate and party of their choice through the application of what he called maximum force in all the wards of the constituency. He went on to say, "We know we won the election fairly and squarely, but our mandate was stolen." That's what he claims. Well, that's the program for this afternoon. We thank you so much for joining us on the program. Don't forget, you can also continue the conversation on our social media and on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search Channels Television and you get access to all our content. I'm Kayode Kelu. Have a beautiful day ahead.